of getting the people to accept the idea. A few more attacks or other national crises, and they will willingly accept these measures and more. There has also been talk about the vulnerability of food sources. Is it possible that food will become so controlled that selected individuals or groups, even God's people, will be prevented from obtaining it? Certainly it could be made difficult for them to obtain the food from the usual sources. Is Ellen White's counsel concerning country living relevant for us today? The last year of global and national events are a serious warning to God's people. Did you notice that most of the military action in Afghanistan since September 11 has been focused on a few isolated religious extremists? The Taliban is considered to be extremist. Osama bin Laden is considered to be an extremist. Hamas is considered to be an extremist organization, and there are many others. Regardless of the fact that the Quran advocates the violent destruction of anyone that refuses to become Muslim, a media distinction is being made between tolerant moderates and extremists. Islam, we are told, is peace-loving, except for these extremists. The military has been spending time practicing their skills in hunting down religious extremists from cave to cave. When you have to flee to the rocks and the mountains, the military will have the skills and the equipment to rout you out. Although bin Laden has been a little elusive, the military is unknowingly developing systems that eventually can be used against God's people. You and I are going to be more helpless than bin Laden unless you have the angels of God to make you invisible. Consider this statement. During the night a very impressive scene passed before me. There seemed to be great confusion and conflict of armies. A messenger from the Lord stood before me and said, "Call your household. I will lead you. Follow me." He led me down a dark passage, through a forest, then through the clefts of the mountains, and said, "Here you are safe." There were others who had been led to this retreat. The heavenly messenger said, "The time of trouble has come as a thief in the night, as the Lord warned you it would come." That's Maranatha 2:70. Do you think the angels of God will protect many of his faithful souls during the coming social and economic boycott, as well as during the final pursuit in spite of all the expensive high-tech equipment? Some will be arraigned before the courts of the land, and some will even be martyrs, but others will be protected in ways that defy all the instruments of human genius and invention. At first, there will be attempts to curtail the operation of extremist groups operating under the cover of religion. Do you think it is possible that Adventists will be divided into mainline and extreme groups? Mainline Adventists will be considered balanced and acceptable like most Muslims. Those who are faithful to Christ, love the truth enough to die for it, who have high standards and are unwilling to compromise, are the kind of people that will get profiled and painted as extreme. If you are faithful to Christ, you will be painted with the extremist brush and treated very differently from mainline Adventists. Notice also how Taliban captives are treated. They were given a unique legal description. They are not POWs, or prisoners of war, but detainees. Under the Geneva Convention, POWs have certain rights, but detainees have no rights. American leaders are trying to assure the people that these detainees are being treated with rights compatible with the Geneva Convention. Under the definition of detainees, however, there is no legal reason why they can't be treated in unconstitutional ways or be tortured. Civilian observers are not permitted at Guantanamo Bay. Thus, no one outside the military really knows for sure how the detainees are being treated. Think how faithful souls, detained on one pretext or another, are likely to be treated. This special classification of Taliban captives is making the American public become accustomed to quarantining. Who is going to question the treatment of Adventist detainees under the chaos and awesome conflict over the coming Sunday laws? The war against the Taliban is being used to condition Americans to not question matters of national security. Police agencies have admitted that they are carefully monitoring and gathering intelligence on what they perceive to be extremist Islamic groups. What is an extremist group? Isn't that a group that has beliefs that are not within the normal mainstream of their religion or society? Americans are being cultivated to fear those labeled as religious extremists and those with deep religious convictions. In the past, Americans were willing to tolerate more religious diversity and even religious exclusivity, but not anymore. The Taliban and other religious extremists of the Islamic world are giving the United States plenty of opportunity to develop hostility to religious extremism, as it's called. In Germany, dramatic changes are taking place beneath the surface. Germans are quietly acquiescing to government intrusion and restrictions on their lives that would previously have been unthinkable. Many of Germany's colleges and universities have begun to open their file cabinets and computer hard drives to criminal investigators who are seeking financial, educational, and travel information that fit their profile of the typical terrorists. Profiles of religious extremists are being developed in America, too. Suppose a profile of a Seventh-day Adventist extremist is developed. What would it include? Perhaps homeschooled children? Belief that the end of the world is at hand? Belief in extreme religious views such as the papacy as the biblical Antichrist? Willingness to be martyred over keeping the Sabbath, and so forth? The definition might include that an SDA extremist knows his Bible very well. He subscribes to certain kinds of magazines and literature. He goes to certain types of places and buys certain types of foods. It's not that difficult to develop